All right, welcome to our latest opponent preview, and I'm pleased to be joined by Scott Springer, who covers Cincinnati for the Cincinnati Enquirer. And Scott, you've been covering the Bearcats for quite a while.
Oh yeah, I'm from Cincinnati, but I had worked in Tampa when I started in media. So I come home in 1990, and one of my first assignments was go to Riverfront Stadium where they played at the time, and they were playing Louisville, who was coached by Howard Schnellenberger at the time. So that's been quite a while. And then I've covered them through their initial when they first got into a conference and first made a bowl game after 47 some odd years, and then Big East and AAC and now Big 12 and all this stuff, and basketball also. So I've seen a lot of things. It's kind of weird. There's actually I'm now covering kids of kids that I covered on occasion.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've gotten to that point a little bit. I On the high school ranks, I interviewed a girl earlier this year at the state championships that I covered her dad. I think that was the first time I've interviewed an athlete that I also interviewed their parents. So that gets a little weird when you start to that. You know, you've been around a while when you're
Oh
doing
yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, and I usually tell them, I said, "Well, I hate admitting this, but I covered your father or your mother or whoever it
Yeah.
was." But yeah, there's a current Bearcat, Antoine Peak Jr., who's a reserve defensive back, and his father played defensive line for the Bearcats and made it into the NFL a handful of seasons with the Browns and the Texans. So that's kind of neat in a way.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So you're great to give us perspective on Cincinnati, who the Buffs will play this year in Boulder. It's been a very long time since the two teams have played. They played once back in the 70s. I don't remember when that game was, but long before you and I started covering sports, even though we've been doing it a while.
Right, right.
It was so long ago, it was before our time. But it's a new opponent for the Buffs. It's a new one for Cincinnati. I mean, how do Bearcat fans feel about this new Big 12 that you're now a second year in, but you get some new opponents like Colorado.
I think they're excited about it. I think it's exciting to see what the league is doing, adding these new teams, and these are quality teams that all came from the Pac-12 there, and it gives you new venues to go to. I can tell you the one road game that most of the fans that have the wherewithal to go that you've heard them talk about was, I want to go to Boulder. I want to
Yeah.
see Colorado. I understand that game sold out. That's what Coach Prime said at media days there. So I don't know how many of them got tickets, but it's a new venue, a new place to go, and we'll see what happens. It's anyone's guess. I was in at Big 12 media days. They picked the Bearcats 14th. I forget where they had Colorado, but um, I really don't know how anyone definitively knows. You're totally basing it on the previous year, and now everything, there's so much turnover. You guys know that as well as anyone. Cincinnati has 47 new scholarship players, so every year now you're turning a new culture, so to speak, and trying to get them going.
Yeah. Yeah. First off, as far as the tickets, that's a tough one. It's family weekend for the Buffs. That's always a tough one for the opposing teams to get tickets. In fact, 2 years ago when C was terrible, their one win was on family weekend and it was nearly a sellout. So even during the bad seasons, they pretty much almost sell out that game. So that's a tough one. But Cincinnati, we know them from recent years. I mean, even the Buff fans been following college football have known Cincinnati in recent years and the success they had are fickle. And then last year, obviously, the new conference it took a little bit of a dip. Um, what happened last year with this team? Was it the new conference, or was it all the changes combined? What kind of happened last year?
It was a little bit of everything. It started out great. They had the initial game that they should have won, Eastern Kentucky, and they did. And then you go to Pitt, their ACC team. Cincinnati's played them before, had some terrific games with them, historic games with them, and they win that game on the road. You come out of that, you're 2-0, and then you have your neighborhood rival, the Miami Redhawks, who are a Mid-American Conference team. Cincinnati beat them 16 times in a row, but they let it go to overtime and lost. It's just they lost. I think maybe in hindsight, the coaches might admit that they maybe overlooked that game because the very next game you had Oklahoma. Cincinnati gave Oklahoma a real tight game. Really, I think it wound up 20-6, but it was within a touchdown there for a good while. and they were playing without their top tackler, but it's his own fault. He violated team rules, and so he didn't play. But so you had a lot of games like that. You had, they finished 3-9, easily three, if not four, very, very winnable games, just where one goofy thing happens or another. And had they won the 6 or 7, made a bowl game, I think people would have a little different opinion on it. But what I've tried to tell people, it's like, let me tell you what, the Big 12 is so much better than the American Athletic Conference. And that's not a bad league. It's just, it is. It's just one of the things the coaches notice. The players are bigger, faster, stronger, all that. You've got, well-known college towns that's the only thing in town that they come out to, and they travel. People were coming to Nippert Stadium, and Nippert Stadium only holds about 40,000, and Iowa State showed up pretty well. Oklahoma showed up pretty well. So these are fan bases that are used to traveling and all that. Here in Cincinnati, you have the element of having pro sports, the Bengals and the Reds, and there's a good soccer team. And so some cities are up against that. Houston, I don't know how much it is with you guys being close to Denver, but it's something that you have to deal with because, you go to Oklahoma State, there's one thing to do in Stillwater, and that's go watch the Cowboys, and same deal at a lot of places. So I think they maybe were better than people think last year. It's just they didn't win the close games, and that's the key to a good season. They in theory got rid of who wasn't a match this past season. Got some new players in, decent resumes. So I think this is the roster that they like. The schedule looks a little more favorable, so I think their outlook now is let's get a bowl game and build it from there and try to get the confidence back up.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, year two in this conference, do you feel like that they're more equipped to handle that and maybe turn some of those close games and be able to win in this conference more so than last year?
Well, you'd like to think so, but there again, it's like, it's a new group of players. So
Yeah.
you got to, you turn a bunch of I's into we's, and if you can do that, you do well. But yeah, it's a tough deal, but you can't, it's just like, like the relief pitcher that just gave up a home run. You got to go after the next guy. And, if you throw a pick against somebody, you can't put your head down, and you got to recover from it and go on. And the good teams are able to do that. And just, last year, they had some very unfortunate twists and turns toward the end of the games. They had some red zone issues. I moved the ball between the 20s, but inside the red zone, goofy things were happening, and it just didn't pan out. But it was the 5th season in a row that Satterfield's offense, even going back to Louisville, they averaged 200 yards rushing, 200 yards passing, pretty balanced. It's effective. Offense wasn't necessarily the problem, other than the red zone issues. But the defense, the secondary, I mean, they got smoked quite a bit, and I think they made some moves to resolve that.
Yeah, offensively, new quarterback this year, Brendan Sorsby comes over from Indiana. Is he the favorite to start? Do you think he'll be the guy?
I have to think, because when you go and get someone in the portal, let's not kid one another. There's money being passed, and this is somebody that you invested in, and I think he's the guy. Now, having said that, the backup's probably Brady Lichtenberg, who was a backup last year. They do have a nice looking freshman, Samaj Jones, but it's tough to throw a freshman right into the Big 12. Very talented kid, fast, throws the ball well. But Sorsby got about 7 starts in Indiana. He's a big dude, like 6'3", 235. He runs well and throws it very well. Former baseball player, shortstop. So you have the Patrick Mahomes effect, where you can throw from different angles and stuff. So now we haven't seen him play a Big 12 game yet, but he did play some in the Big 10. And they're a pretty good conference last time I checked. And so I like his attitude, the way he carries himself. He carries himself like a very confident quarterback. So again, it's you'll hear me say "let's see" a lot, because I'm not going to go out on a limb and say, yeah, this guy's the greatest in the world, because you got to see somebody in a game first.
Yeah, one guy you got to see, Corey Kiner, had a nice breakout year last year, 1,000-yard rusher. This conference is loaded with good running backs, and he's one of them. I know they got other weapons on offense, but how big of a key is he this season?
Oh yeah, I think he's a go-to, and he plows through, and he's gotten faster. You know, they work on the speed and try to get him faster and all that. But you know, he's run in the SEC and in the Big 12 now, 1,047 yards last year. Very determined, and the upside is you have the entire starting offensive line back, which I think that helps any team, and you have some pretty good-looking guys hoping to get in there and get their chances as well. But Luke Kandra is a highly rated guard that he'll play in the NFL, and the center's been back, and a couple other NFL prospects at least. Kandra's the biggest one, but having all five back and they know what to do now. The system isn't new. That's got to help, and particularly in a Satterfield offense where there's going to be a fair amount of running.
Yeah. But let's shift over to defense. You mentioned they struggled there last year. It feels like their whole secondary now plays for UCF. Looking through the portal, they lost a lot of guys to UCF. But what do they look like defensively? Where do you think they improved? And what's your thought on what they'll look like on that side?
Well, a whole ton of new names. Really, the only ones coming back, Jordan Young, who was a Florida Gator transfer, and he did well late in the season. Young man named Kalen Carroll is he's probably still a backup at this point, but they got Derek Canteen out of Virginia Tech. He was at media days and carries himself well. Josh Menkins Jr. was at Louisville. They have this they call it the star position. So last year that would have been Deshaun Pace, who, as you mentioned, he's one of the UCF guys. But Mekhi Miller is the guy that they have at that now. They just have Kai Stokes from Ohio State. They have 6, 7 guys from pretty good schools that had some playing experience that now get to come in and they're in a new defense, 3-3-5, and we'll see how that works. It worked at Iowa State, but obviously really wanted to shore up the defensive backfield, and I think they did on paper. Just again, you got to see what they do.
Yeah, and Cincinnati might have one of the tallest punters in the
Oh
country.
yeah,
Mason Fletcher,
yeah,
I met him at Big 12 Media Day.
yeah.
Chatted with him because he and Colorado's punter Mark Bassett are both from Pro Kick Australia, but super nice kid there, and he might be the tallest punter in America.
No, yeah, he's hysterical too. If you talk to
Yeah,
him, you found that out.
yeah,
I
he
mean,
was great. Yeah,
his dad, an Australian rules football legend from Melbourne. And then the odd thing is they picked up his brother Max, who was punting at Arkansas, and Max was averaging over 46 yards a boot last year. And so he's kind of on standby, going to redshirt this year. And then when Mason moves on, you have Max Fletcher, not quite as tall, but redhead, 6'4", 6'5". But yeah, Mason's a tall, linky Ichabod Crane looking guy, and he can really get rid of it and hit some scoreboards and drop it within the 20 and all that. I've always teased him though. It's like I said, you played some Australian rules football. Where's these running plays? So, but I want to see him run the ball. I want to see those long legs in motion.
well, I know that CU fans would love to see Mason Fletcher play a lot in Boulder.
Oh yeah, I'm
Because
sure. Yeah,
that
that's
means
the
the
key.
offense
If you're a
is going
Bearcat
well.
fan, you're hoping Mason Fletcher doesn't get on the field. That's why I always tease
Right,
the special teams, like the long snapper guy. If anyone knows your long snapper's name, he's probably not doing well.
right.
If you don't know who he is, but everything just goes swimmingly, he's doing a bang up job, and he might get a job in the league.
Yeah, I joked with Colorado's punter. I said, "You're the one guy on the field that people don't want to see play." You know,
Yeah,
everybody else. I mean, the long snapper, they want you out there because that means you're scoring points. Maybe you're snapping
yeah.
for points. But
But it is a key position. I mean,
yeah,
in a lot of games, you got to flip the field, and
yeah,
you can't go big league football. You can't go for it, 4th down and 10 from your own 20. I mean, that takes a big set of whats if you do so. But you're better off, punting the ball half the time.
yeah. So Cincinnati, you mentioned they're picked 14th. They might be better than that if they can flip around some of those close games. What's your thought on this team? Is this a bowl team?
I think it is. I think they have what it takes because I look at the first 4 games and they're favorable. Now, again, we don't know positively what the other teams have, but the first game is Towson. Okay, that's one on the schedule. You're supposed to win that. If you lose that one, then look out. Uh, then Pitt comes to Cincinnati. Now, Pitt's improved too. Pat Narduzzi's a pretty good coach. he was a Bearcat defensive coordinator under Mark D'Antonio here. But that'll be a good game, and you beat them last year. The fact that they're here makes it more of a winnable chance, I think. Then you have the rematch with Miami, which you have to go. Oxford is about 45 minutes to an hour from Cincinnati, and it's probably going to be the last time they ever go up there and play, because this series is going to come to an end here soon. Because Miami instigated it. Basically, they won last year's game, and then they said, well, we're not coming back. And then UC said, well, we're not going up there for the other one. So there's next year's road game, and then they're going to play downtown at the Bengal Stadium in 2026, and that may be it. So way too much information on that game for your audience, but that's a game Cincinnati has to be looking at that and going, gee whiz, we really let that one slide, and that's one you really got to go get. And there's a trophy involved, the victory bell, and I'm sure they want to bring that thing back. So then you're looking at 3-0, and then you have your first Big 12 game is Houston. Now they've got a new coach. Willie Fritz has been to Nippert and beaten the Bearcats as the head coach of Tulane, but Houston, you got to figure they might be down a tad, and so you got a decent chance at a 4-0 start. And if you get there, you're 2 wins away from a bowl, and anything can happen. Most seasons you're going to win some that you maybe shouldn't have, and you'll probably lose one that you figured you had. So I just think out of that, there's a good possibility of 6 or 7.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see what they can do. And, I know Buff fans look forward to seeing them, come to Boulder later this year. And one more thing before we get you out of here. You were telling me that because you've been covering sports in Cincinnati for so long, you actually covered Deion Sanders as a baseball player with the Reds. And what was that experience like for you?
Well, maybe the fastest baseball player I've ever seen. There was a guy named Billy Hamilton here, and Ellie De La Cruz is pretty fast now. But Deion was crazy. It was, he gets on first and single to right, he might score. And inside the park home runs, just tremendous wheels. And I remember one of UC's former athletic directors, Bob Goyne, was the athletic director at Florida State, and he would tell me stories of Coach Prime when he was just Deion. And he'd be warming up for a baseball game in his baseball pants, and then he'd go down to the track and win a heat of the 100, and then come up and play the baseball game. The guy's really amazing when you think of all that he's done. And he's hosted Saturday Night Live. He's been on TV. He's now coaching the Buffaloes, did well at Jackson State. And then the last conversation I remember having with him was, I believe the Reds were playing in Fort Myers, so that might have been Royals or Twins or somebody back then. So this would be like 2001, I think. And a lot of the guys go golf after the games, and I asked him what he was doing. He's on going fishing. Well, he's from Fort Myers. I said, well, you probably know every water hole here. And oh yeah. And I just started teasing him. I said, you know what? It's like, you might be the next guy to host the American Sportsman, the old Kurt Gowdy show. And you know what? By God, he did. I was saying it as a joke. That happened.
Yeah.
He hosted American Sportsman. So I would never put anything by the guy. He was fun at Big 12 Media Days. He was the star of day 2. He had great stories, said good things about Cincinnati, even gave us some news that he wanted to play for the Bengals and stay in town, Bengals and Reds. And I guess that didn't pan out. And some of those Bengals teams really could have used him. So I don't know. Amazing dude. And, he's having a ball. It looks like it's, you made it when you got a guy that carries your stuff.
Right.
Because that Big 12 media guy, I don't know the guy's name, but what a gig. He carries the backpack and he's just there. And he's got a black hat, and I don't mess with people in black hats.
Well, it should be a fun game for him because he does talk glowingly about Cincinnati. And so, I'm sure that'll be a fun one for him. Just, he doesn't have that ties with the Bearcats, but with the town of Cincinnati. So, I'm sure that the town will enjoy, seeing the Bearcats go against Coach Prime because of their history there. So, should be a fun game.
I would think so. Everyone's looking forward to it. I haven't been. I've got a son that lives in Utah now, so I've been out that way to see him. I don't think I've been to Colorado since I was covering a Bengals Broncos game, and that's maybe close to 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So looking forward to seeing it myself.
Awesome. Well, I'll look forward to seeing you in Boulder. Thank you very much, and enjoy preseason camp. And we'll see you sometime later on this season.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.